All right, Joey, where are we?
We are in the Meadowlands on our Oregon House property.
And what's the date?
It's December 2nd, 2013.
And who came by to visit yesterday?
Well, let's see. Start with the oldest. Teddy came by with Sharon, and then there's Teddy's son Stephen, and then his son Elliot, and Stephen's wife Linda, and I think that's it.
And what did we do?
And what they did was to load a whole lot of wheat into our crawl space. And you and I were down here chainsawing, and then they all walked down here to say hello and walk around and look at stuff. And then we all went back to the house and visited for a while, and then we went out to got pizza.
Had pizza roundup.
Had pizza roundup.
And then Thanksgiving, it was just a few days ago. Who came by for Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving, we had 11 people all together for Thanksgiving, which is a good number because I have exactly 11 plates of my china. So it was Jimmy and me, Justin and Eleonora, and Eleonora's father, and Barbara and Dan Boers, and Brandon Boers and his wife, Amanda, and their daughter, Harper, and then also Brandon's sister, Molly.
And what did you make?
We had turkey with stuffing and sweet potato casserole and wonderful mashed potatoes and peas and cranberry sauce and rolls.
What kind of pies?
And then we had 2 pumpkin pies, an apple pie, an apple cranberry pie, a pecan pie, and a cherry pie. We had homemade ice cream made by Harper and Joy, and we had lots and lots of whipped cream.
It's good stuff. All right.
You should do before and after, Justin.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you could take the camera over there while we're doing and do the interview, and you could pan it across the stuff that we haven't done yet, and then you could show it after you've done it.
That's all right. I just want to sort of get a broader sense of, or to provide a broader sense of what it looks like in November, actually it's December 2013.
I'm going to head over there and sit down.
Yeah.
Oh, I should take some lockers and stuff. I'm not. Come on, Biscuit.
What'd you forget now?
That ear stuff.
You like to do that. All right, Joy, you took a flight back from England when you're 5 years old. I'm hoping that you'll talk about that. Tell us why you're there. And then after that, if you'll expand more on differences and changes in standard of living in terms of your experiences flying or just normal things when you were younger and growing up as compared to the way they are now.
All right. Well, basically what I'm going to be talking about is something called shifting baselines. And that is that the way things were when I was growing up is obviously the norm for me. But when those change over the years, the next group of people growing up, the changes are the norm for them. And if you haven't ever known the way it used to be and how it used to be better in many ways, then your expectations are that much lower, because what you grew up with is what has evolved into a lower standard, if you will. So I'm going to talk first of all about the first plane trip that I remember. I had flown on a plane before then, but I don't remember it. But when I was 5 years old, shortly before my 5th birthday, my mother became very ill with tuberculosis and had to go away to a sanatorium for a year. And so my aunt, her sister, came over from England to pick me up and take me back to England with her. And the plan was that she would take care of me. And then my sister, who was only a few months old then, went to my father's parents in Brooklyn, New York, and they took care of her as a baby. Anyway, so I went to England with my aunt, and we went over on a ship, the Caronia. And I spent a year there, and then when my mother was released from the sanatorium and was able to come home, then my parents sent for me, and my aunt made arrangements for me to fly back to the United States. I don't remember what the airline was, but I do remember that my aunt took me to the airport, and there was a bus there, and she wasn't allowed to go any further, and so they put me on a bus with my luggage, and a stewardess then took me into the airport and I suppose put me on the airplane. But I remember the flight and the services on the flight very well. First of all, of course, I was only 5, so it was a lot smaller then, but I remember that there was lots of room to move around in the seat. And I remember being served meals, and they brought like a tray table that actually sat down over the sides of the seat, and there was like a linen napkin, and there was silverware, regular silverware, not plastic, but regular silverware, and china plates and so forth and so on, because I remember that the plane started bouncing around and the china plates were sliding. But I remember that. And
which airport did you fly into? You were going to New York, right?
In New York, yeah, I have no idea what airport I flew into, but, LaGuardia or whatever, I don't know.
I can't imagine how you couldn't remember that.
I mean, the name, I don't
I'm
remember
joking.
the name of the airport. Anyway, but one of the things, there were lots of neat things. I remember the stewardess came down with all sorts of magazines and stuff to read, and, things like that. And, I couldn't read at that age, but I was looking at the magazines. And then one thing I remember very clearly is that all of the female passengers on the air flight got an orchid. And I remember it was a beautiful purple and red orchid, and it was in a little holder thing like this, and so you're supposed to pin it on. So I got an orchid because I was a female passenger. And I don't think they give out orchids on airlines any longer. So anyway, that was the first air flight that I remember. And then of course you went in, you got off the plane, and went through into where the people were meeting the passengers, and my mom and dad were there, and so that was that. But obviously plane travel has changed a great deal since then. The seats are much smaller. They're much closer together in terms of front to back. The food that you get, you usually have to pay for. It's not part of the included fare. They don't come around with magazines and things. Of course, I'm talking about, I don't fly first class, so maybe they do these things in first class. But I didn't fly first class when I was 5. So anyway, so those are definitely big changes. It's a lot more like a cattle car than a positive traveling experience, which is what it used to be. So.
What was security like back then? Because even I remember when I was younger, security was much more easy. You could just walk right up to the gate.
Well, security was pretty much non-existent. I remember Ontario Airport is a huge airport now, but I remember...
That's Ontario, Southern California.
Southern California, right. I remember going to meet a flight of my mother's. My mother was coming back from a trip that she had made back east, And the plane landed on the tarmac, and all of us who were going to meet the passengers went right on out the door and out on the tarmac and right to the bottom of the whatever you call it, the thing that comes down from the plane. There was no security, so it was much easier, much more friendly, if you will. And of course, you know that the changes have been radical in that area. So yeah, there was no security. You just came in, showed your passport, showed your tickets, got on the plane. Paper tickets too. We all had paper tickets. There was nothing printed, and you didn't go and go to a little kiosk and print up your ticket. You were issued a ticket, and you usually went through a travel agent to do that. So
Travel agents, you don't see many of them
no,
anymore.
I don't see many of them anymore. But that's how you used to get your ticket, and they'd make arrangements for you for hotels and things like that. You didn't go on. Well, there wasn't internet, so you didn't go online and do any of that stuff, and it was kind of a hassle to call up because it was long distance, and usually so your travel agent would do all that for you. So that was one change, and I think another change has to do with vehicles and fuel for vehicles. The first car I ever had was a Ford, a black and white Ford 1954, I think, and no seat belts, and it had so much room in the front seat. I mean, it was a great deal of room in the back, and gasoline was 25 cents a gallon. And I remember passing an ARCO station. This is when I was in college, so I would have been 1920. I remember passing a gas station, ARCO gas station, and they wanted 30 cents a gallon for the gas. And I thought, nobody's going to stop there. Nobody's going to pay 30 cents a gallon for gas. So I think people would be happy to pay 30 cents a gallon for gas now. So
What was it like when you actually went to get the gas? Was the experience different? Because now you just get out and do it yourself. And
yeah, it was quite a bit different. You'd pull into the gas station, and someone would come out from the gas station, the little office in the gas station, and they would wash your windows for you, and they would put the gas in for you. They'd ask you, cash or charge, and you tell them how much you wanted or fill it up, and they'd say, want air in your tires? Do you want me to check your oil? And they would do that or not do that depending on what you said, and you never got out of the car, and.
that was just included. That wasn't. You didn't have to pay for any of that.
No,
right?
no, that was just the service that they did, and yeah. So, and actually, I remember the first time I had to pump my own gas. I pulled into the station. It was a few years later, actually, not that many years. Maybe I was about 25 or so, and I pulled into the gas station, and nobody came out from the little office, and I really needed gas. And so another car pulled in, and a guy got out, and he was pumping gas. And I said something about, is somebody going to come out? And he said, no, this is, you have to do it yourself. And he had to show me how to pump my gas because I didn't know how to do it. I'd never done it before. So, yeah, I remember that very, very clearly. So, anyway, let's see. What else can I talk about? Oh, going to the doctor would be a good one. Yeah, going to the doctor was a very different experience 30, 40 years ago. Then you called up and made an appointment and went to see the doctor. And the doctor would have you come in and sit down, and the nurse would take your blood pressure and do stuff like that. And then the doctor would talk to you and ask you what was the matter and spend some time talking to you. And you basically had a relationship with your doctor. You went to the same doctor all the time, and you talked to your doctor and so forth. And of course, it's very different now. Now basically your doctor's got everything online, and so he goes like this while you're telling him your problems. So that also is very different, and you don't get referrals right away, and it's also a lot more expensive.
How about now?
Now, yeah. Now.
So before you could pretty much go where you wanted to, and it was a lot cheaper. And
oh yeah, I mean you when you got to a new town, when you moved, you got to a town, you ask your neighbors and people like that, who's a good doctor, and then they'd say, well, so and so you'd call up so and so, and I'd like to come in, and so you'd come in, and that was it. There wasn't all the the HMOs and the PPOs and things like that. You just paid for it yourself, but of course it was much cheaper then, so you could.
Huh. Any other examples that come to mind right away?
No, I'm sure there are, and I'm sure that I'll regret not thinking of any, but...
Well, I can harass you in the future about it if you remember.
Harass me in the future about it, yeah. I'm just trying to think in terms of... Oh, housing is something else I should mention, because that is very different. The first real job I had, apart from babysitting, was and stuff like that, was I worked for JCPenney Company. I worked for them full-time, and I started out... minimum wage at that time was $1.25 an hour, And I thought I was doing well because I started out at $1.30 an hour. And I worked full-time, and my paycheck, my net paycheck for a 40-hour week was, after taxes and so forth, I remember it was $43.70. And so, as I said, I worked full-time, and a friend of mine and I decided to get an apartment, which we did. We got a little apartment out in Rubidoux, and it was the JLJ Apartments. I don't know what JLJ stood for, but it was the JLJ Apartments, and the rent on the apartments was $69.50 a month, which, you know, between the two of us both working, we could cover with no difficulty. And I think that utilities were included except for phone, so we paid for the phone, and we paid for food, and my dad took care of the insurance on my car for me. I didn't have to pay the insurance, but I had to put gas in it and take care of when it broke down, take care of things like that. And I remember that we did, my friend Janet and I did that with no trouble at all, and I was actually saving something like $25 a week at that time. So that is a major change. Nowadays you don't, a lot of people, when you start out with your first job, you don't have the financial resources to go out and rent an apartment and, you know, do the things that we did and put money in savings. So that is a major change, and I doubt very much you could get any place that was habitable for $69.50 a month anymore, especially in California.
So even though you're making barely above minimum wage, you were pretty comfortable in doing it.
Yeah. Well, I remember that chicken was 25 cents a pound, things like that.
That is a pretty significant difference.
Yeah, and I remember after a while, let's see, I think I started out at $1.30 an hour, and then I got a raise to, I think it was $1.35 an hour, and I thought that was a big deal. And before I left, I was making $1.42 an hour. But then I saw an ad for a job over at Interstate Bakeries. It was Interstate Bakeries, but it was the Southland Corporation. Anyway, I got a job. I applied over there, and I got a big jump in pay. I made $2.25 an hour then. But I had to join the Teamsters Union, which was pricey. It cost me $100 initiation fee to join the Teamsters Union. But I worked for them for a couple of years, so I suppose I got it back.
Huh.
And actually, I am still technically a member of the Teamsters Union, because when I left that job, I didn't resign from the union. I withdrew from the union, which is different, which means that if I ever got another Teamsters job again, I could just go right back in the union without paying new initiation fees.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. And again, if you remember anything else, I'll harass you in the future.
Well, I touched lightly on the whole topic of food. Food was obviously much, much less expensive then, so, you know, you could eat pretty well on pretty low income.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.